The sea has always carried whispers, voices older than memory, older than the stars. Each wave that rises holds a secret, each tide a story waiting to be told. Listen closely, and the ocean will speak of a throne not built by human hands. It is a throne shaped by coral, pearl, and the endless breath of the tide. Sailors once swore they glimpsed it shimmering beneath the foam at dawn. They believed it rose only when the sea itself sought a ruler to guide its heart. And at the center of this tale stands Poseidon, the lord of the deep. He was not merely a king, but a keeper of balance, a listener of the waves. The trident in his grasp was not just power, but promise, a bond with the waters. In his realm, light bends through crystal caverns and songs echo in seashell halls. Every dolphin leap and every ripple carried the memory of his rule. The throne was called the Waveborn Throne, eternal, shifting, alive with ocean breath. It was said that when Poseidon sat upon it, the tides bowed in reverence. Tonight, we journey into that myth, where sea and sky meet in shimmering blue. Close your eyes, hear the waves, and step into the legend of Poseidon. The sea is a library without walls, each wave a page, each tide a voice telling its tale. Sailors learned to listen, for the ocean spoke in rhythms older than their songs. At night, when the stars shimmered, the waves carried whispers of forgotten stories. Some said the water held memory, that every ripple was a word from long ago. The currents moved like sentences, flowing from one coast to another with secrets. Fishermen resting on wooden boats felt it too, the hush of something ancient. They told their children that the sea did not just hold fish, but living wisdom. The hush of waves against the hull was a heartbeat, steady and eternal. When storms gathered, it was not anger, but the ocean reminding all of its might. When calm returned, it was the same ocean teaching patience and quiet grace. Legends grew from these lessons, drifting from mouth to mouth like floating lanterns. One tale rose above the rest, spoken softly in harbors and sung by wandering bards. It was the story of a throne, a seat not of iron or stone, but of tide and coral. They called it the Waveborn Throne, born from the breath of the sea itself. No map showed its place, yet every sailor claimed to have seen its shimmer. In dawn's first light, they swore it gleamed beneath silver waves. Sometimes, in still waters, it appeared as a shadow, vast and inviting. Those who gazed upon it felt their hearts stirred, as though called by destiny. But the throne was not for mortals, it was said, but for the sea's true master. The ocean chose its keeper, just as the moon guides the tide without fail. And so the whispering waves began weaving the name of Poseidon, not as a conqueror, but as a listener, one who understood the language of waters. He was the voice that calmed storms, the ear that heard the song of dolphins. Children asked their fathers if Poseidon truly sat upon the throne. The fathers smiled, saying the sea itself would rise to welcome its lord. And when waves bowed, folding gently on the shore, that was their answer. Each ripple was a hymn, each tide a prayer to the unseen king. Merchants crossing oceans poured wine into the water in quiet offering. They asked the sea for safe passage, whispering Poseidon's name. Sailors carved small wooden boats and set them adrift as gifts. These offerings were swallowed by the sea, carried to the unseen throne. In return, they believed Poseidon guided them with steady winds. When storms calmed suddenly, they swore it was his hand upon the tide. The throne was more than coral and pearl. It was a symbol of harmony. It reminded all who traveled the waters that the sea was alive. Alive with memory, alive with voice, alive with its chosen keeper. And so the tale spread, across islands, across empires, across generations. The throne was not feared, but revered, like the steady pulse of the moon. It was the reminder that the ocean belonged to no one but itself. Yet in its vastness, it chose a guardian, and that was Poseidon. The whispering waves told this story again and again, never tiring. Each retelling was like foam dissolving into sand, soft but eternal. Even today, when sailors hear a hush before dawn, they remember. They believe the sea is speaking once more, telling of its throne. And in the endless murmur of waves, the story lives, carried forever. The beginning of the sea's king did not rise from foam, but from the heart of old Olympus. Long before mortals dreamed of ships, the gods divided the realms of creation. Cronus, the old Titan, had swallowed his children, fearing they would take his crown. But fate cannot be swallowed, and one by one the children returned to light. Among them was Poseidon, born not of silence, but of storm and wave. He grew as the brother of Zeus, the lord of sky, and Hades, keeper of the unseen. Together they stood upon the mountain when the age of Titans was done. There lots were cast, not in anger, but in balance, to share the world's dominion. Zeus stretched his hand toward the sky, claiming thunder and cloud as his realm. Hades accepted the unseen earth below, the quiet depths of shadow and rest. And Poseidon looked to the waters, endless, alive, and filled with mystery. The sea called him, not with thunder, but with a steady and eternal song. It promised vastness, freedom, and a throne woven from tides and living coral. So the ocean became his dominion, not by conquest, but by calling. The gods honored this balance, and the world breathed with harmony again. Poseidon stepped into his kingdom, and the waves embraced him as their own. Dolphins leapt as though greeting him, their arcs glittering in the sun. Seahorses circled, delicate yet strong, forming patterns in the shallows. Every current seemed to bow, whispering, "Welcome to the new Lord of Waters." He did not raise a crown of iron, but wore the salt spray upon his brow. His hair tangled with the wind, his eyes mirrored the shifting blue of the sea. Where Zeus carried thunder and Hades' shadows, Poseidon carried the tide's voice. The ocean gave him not silence, but a ceaseless song of life and memory. In that moment, he became not a ruler above the waters, but within them. The sea did not obey him as a servant. It recognized him as its kin. Every shore that felt his tide, every ship that swayed, carried his presence. Mortals soon learned his name, whispering it with awe as they cast their nets. Children played at the edge of the waves, pretending to summon him with shells. And when storms rolled across the horizon, they believed it was his breath. Yet Poseidon was not only storm, he was calm, deep and eternal. He was the hush of dawn on a still bay, the cradle of ships at rest. He was the rhythm that carried traders, explorers, and wanderers across the world. And in temples built on cliffs, they poured wine into the sea to honor him. Priests sang hymns, their voices carried away on the wind toward the foam. But Poseidon needed no temple of stone, for the ocean itself was his sanctuary. Every shell was a bell, every cavern a hall, every tide a hymn of praise. The sea did not ask for walls. It asked only for respect and wonder. In return, it gave Poseidon a home where no mortal could ever build. Coral palaces shimmered, their colors brighter than gems of the earth. Whales sang songs that echoed like choirs beneath vaulted ceilings of water. Schools of fish moved in patterns like dancers across polished marble floors. This was his kingdom, alive and infinite, crowned with light and shadow. And within it stood the promise of the Waveborn Throne, waiting for its king. Poseidon, the son of Rhea and Cronus, became its chosen heart and keeper, not by force nor by claim, but because the sea itself had chosen him. Thus began his reign, not as master, but as guardian of the endless blue. The sea was his, and he was the sea bound in eternal embrace. And so the legend of the Ocean King was carried by the whispering waves. The sea had chosen its keeper, yet every keeper needs a bond, a mark of trust. For Poseidon, that bond took form in the shape of a trident, born of fire and craft. The Cyclopes, the one-eyed forgers of the deep earth, shaped it in secret caverns. They were not artisans of war, but of creation, binding metal with divine breath. The trident was no mere weapon, but a staff of command over tide and storm. Its prongs shimmered with the light of the sea, 3 points echoing balance. One for the calm, one for the storm, one for the mysteries of the deep. When Poseidon first held it, the waters stirred as if in recognition. The trident pulsed with living light, as though the ocean's heart beat within it. The gods watched in silence, knowing it was not forged for battle, but for harmony. With it, Poseidon could stir the waves into mountains or soothe them into glass. He could call the rains or open the skies, guiding weather like a gentle hand. Sailors would later swear that when lightning struck the sea, it was the trident's call. Yet no flash of power compared to its quiet gift, the bond of listening. For with it, Poseidon could hear the whispers carried in the current's flow. The voice of a whale in the far north could reach his ear in the south. The sigh of a sailor's prayer could travel across oceans to his throne. The trident was not a crown, but it was recognition, a covenant of the sea. The Cyclopes placed it in his hand, then bowed, their work complete. They said nothing, for the trident itself spoke, its glow filling the chamber. It was the ocean's promise, to answer him, to trust him, to walk with him. Poseidon lifted it high, and the seas beyond the cavern roared in joy. Waves leapt like dancers, winds circled in song, the earth trembled with release. For the trident was more than a gift, it was a bridge between realms. It joined sky, sea, and earth in one flowing rhythm of eternal motion. Zeus commanded thunder, Hades shadows, but Poseidon carried the voice of balance. The mortals soon learned of this trident, though they never saw it clearly. They described it in tales, always glowing, always alive, never merely metal. Some said it was carved of coral and pearl, others of starfire and sea foam. Whatever its form, its meaning remained unchanged. It was the heart of the ocean. Poseidon did not brandish it like a sword, for the trident was not wrath. Instead, he carried it gently, as one carries a child or a song. With it, he could calm quarrels between rivers or guide whales to safe waters. Even the smallest ripple answered when the trident touched the sea. And so it became a symbol, not of war, but of guardianship and care. Sailors carved images of 3-pronged staffs on their boats as blessings. They believed the symbol would draw his gaze, granting safe passage. Parents told children the trident's points reached not only into water, but into dreams. It touched the sea, the heart, and the spirit, binding them in unseen ways. Stories spread that Poseidon never sat alone upon his throne. For beside him, leaning with quiet strength, the trident always stood. It was more than a tool. It was companion, witness, and voice of the waves. The sea, vast and eternal, had given part of itself into his keeping. And so Poseidon's reign deepened, not with conquest, but with harmony. He ruled not by fear of storms, but by the trust of the waters. The trident reminded him each day that the ocean was not his possession. It was his kin, his equal, his boundless companion in the dance of time. Through the trident, Poseidon and the sea were bound as one forevermore. Beneath the restless waves, far beyond the reach of mortal sight, lay Poseidon's kingdom. It was not carved from stone or wood, but grown from coral and woven by currents. Pillars of living reef rose like cathedrals, glowing with light from within. Fish darted between arches of pearl, their scales catching sparks of sun. The sea itself seemed to breathe, shaping halls of wonder and endless song. Bioluminescent creatures lit the shadows, painting walls with stars of the deep. Whales passed like guardians, their voices echoing across the crystal chambers. Dolphins spun in joyous spirals, carrying messages between distant coasts. Every corner of this realm shimmered, alive with motion and memory. Seagrass swayed like tapestries, shifting with the rhythm of unseen tides. Shells lined the floors, polished smooth by centuries of flowing water. In hidden grottos, pearls glowed softly, treasures not of gold, but of time. This was no static throne room, but a living, breathing sanctuary of the sea. Here Poseidon walked not as a master, but as part of the eternal design. The creatures bowed to him, not in fear, but in recognition of kinship. He was the tide's voice, and they sang back to him in countless tongues. Nereids glided gracefully, their laughter weaving with the song of the waves. Tritons raised conch shells, sounding calls that echoed through the ocean's heart. Even the smallest shrimp and crab moved, as if part of a great symphony. The kingdom was not silent. It was music, a chorus of life unending. Above, sunlight fractured into shafts that reached the coral palaces below. Each beam danced like fire through the waters, shifting as clouds drifted. The surface world gave its blessing, and the deep world answered in kind. Mortals who dreamed of this place spoke of it as paradise unseen. They imagined marble halls, but reality was greater, more fluid, more alive. The sea did not build monuments to last. It built wonders that changed each day. No two tides left the palace the same, for the ocean loved transformation. Where Zeus had Olympus fixed in mountain stone, Poseidon had motion eternal. His throne was not a chair of iron, but a shifting seat of coral and pearl. It grew with the sea, reshaped by waves, alive as much as its king. When he sat upon it, the waters brightened, as though welcoming him home. The throne pulsed gently, like the heartbeat of the ocean itself. It reminded all who saw it that the sea was not ruled, but shared. Poseidon's kingdom was a covenant, life in balance, vast and unbroken. The trident stood beside the throne, glowing softly in the dim waters. Its light spread like dawn, touching every corner of the palace with warmth. Creatures gathered near, not as subjects, but as companions to their lord. Schools of fish moved in spirals, forming patterns that seemed like prayers. Sea turtles drifted slowly through archways, wise as the tides themselves. Even the silence between songs was full, rich with the weight of presence. For here was the sea's heart, and Poseidon its chosen keeper. He would walk among the reefs, brushing his hand along their edges. Every coral responded with a shimmer, as though greeting its king. When storms raged above, this realm remained steady, its peace unbroken. For it was built not of stone, but of trust, rhythm, and eternal flow. Mortals prayed to temples on land, but this was the true sanctuary, a cathedral with no walls, no roof, no beginning, and no end. The sea itself was the temple, and Poseidon its eternal priest. Here he listened, always listening, to the song of currents and waves. He did not command them, he joined them, a note in their eternal song. Thus the ocean kingdom thrived, unseen but ever present beneath the blue. It was a world of mystery and beauty, where the throne awaited the king, and every tide that touched the shore above carried whispers of this place. The whispers told mortals the truth. The sea is alive, and it remembers. Long before mortals traced maps of the seas, Poseidon watched the horizon with knowing eyes. The ocean was not only his home, but his mirror, vast and unending. Each tide that rolled across the sand carried a memory older than men. Every wave told a tale, every current bore a truth waiting to surface. The gods above on Olympus claimed dominion over land and sky. But Poseidon knew the sea was different, free, wild, untamed in spirit. Its depths held mysteries even Zeus could not command or comprehend. For while storms struck the heavens, the sea endured in silence. It shifted, adapted, yet remained eternal, a living memory of the world. And within that memory lay the origins of the Waveborn Throne. No hand of man or god had forged it. No hammer had struck it. It was shaped by the will of the sea itself, coral rising like breath. Pearl and stone fused in swirls that echoed the rhythm of tides. Legends said the ocean dreamt of a ruler, and the throne was its dream. It grew slowly, unseen, beneath waves where light barely touched. A secret cathedral rising not for worship, but for balance. And when the throne was complete, the sea sought its keeper. It chose Poseidon not by conquest, but by recognition. For he was already of its spirit, its voice, its unbroken rhythm. The trident was given to him as a covenant, a bond with the waters. It was not a weapon, but a compass guiding the tides of the world. With it, he could hear the whispers of currents and the hum of rivers. He could feel the smallest ripple as if it brushed against his own skin. And he listened, always. For that was his greatest gift. Where mortals saw fury and storms, he heard the music of renewal. Where others feared the deep, he found harmony and solace. The throne was more than a seat of rule. It was a promise, a vow that the sea would never be silenced, never forgotten. Every time Poseidon sat upon it, the waters brightened. The fish danced closer, the dolphins leapt, and the reefs shimmered. Even the whales sang lower, their voices honoring his presence. He did not command them. He belonged among them. Yet above, the world of mortals grew restless. They sailed farther, chasing horizons they could not grasp. They built ships of wood and iron, piercing waves like arrows. Their prayers to Poseidon were filled with fear, awe, and pleading. Some sought safe passage, others begged for calm seas. But the god listened not only to prayers, but to balance. He knew the sea gave as much as it took, always in rhythm. When storms rose, they were not punishments, but corrections. When calm stretched long, it was the sea's gift of mercy. Mortals misunderstood, yet they felt his presence in every voyage. The Waveborn Throne remained hidden, unseen by their eyes, but its influence touched every shore, every stream, every harbor. Poseidon did not need temples of stone, for the sea was his altar. Waves upon rocks became hymns, tides became offerings. Every grain of sand carried the memory of his watch. And so the legend of the throne grew, told in whispers at night. Sailors spoke of it as a beacon, a promise beneath the waves, a place where the sea itself knelt before its chosen lord. Children of coastal villages dreamed of seeing it in their sleep. Some swore they had glimpsed it, shining beneath a storm's break. Others claimed to hear its hum when the sea grew still. Whether truth or dream, the throne lived in the hearts of many. And Poseidon, in his quiet strength, kept it safe, unbroken. For he knew it was not only his seat, but the ocean's own soul, a soul that pulsed with life, mystery, and endless blue memory. On the shores of forgotten islands, sailors whispered of visions in the waves. They spoke of shimmering halls beneath the surface, alive with light. Some claimed they heard voices in the surf, calling their names gently. Others swore the tide itself spoke, urging them to listen closer. These tales were more than imagination. They were echoes of truth. For the sea under Poseidon's gaze often reached beyond its depths. It touched dreams, it shaped thoughts, it guided those who would listen. The Waveborn Throne was never meant to be hidden forever. It revealed itself in fragments, glimpses through foam and storm. A pearl shimmer here, a coral spire glimpsed in lightning's flash. Mortals who saw it never forgot, though few were believed. Their stories spread across ports and villages, weaving myth into memory. Fishermen carried them, traders repeated them, children dreamed of them. Thus the legend grew, larger than the waves themselves. Some feared the throne, believing it held storms in its seat. Others worshipped it as a beacon of blessing and safe passage. And still Poseidon listened, hearing every whisper carried on the wind. He felt the balance between fear and wonder in mortal hearts. He knew the sea was both gift and challenge, blessing and test. No ruler of waves could be loved by all, yet all relied upon him. For every ship that reached a harbor, a prayer had been heard. For every voyage lost, a lesson was carried in the tide. Poseidon did not revel in loss, nor did he hoard devotion. He was constant, like the sea itself, giving and taking in rhythm. The throne beneath the waves stood as his eternal reminder, not a monument to power, but a bond with all who sailed. When Poseidon rested upon it, the ocean fell into harmony. Currents aligned, storms bent, and silence wrapped the deep. From whales to minnows, every creature swam in unison. The throne bound sea and sky, mortal and god, life and eternity. But the ocean was not without longing of its own. It yearned to be understood, to share its depth with mortals. Through dreams, it sent visions to those who opened their hearts. A child might see coral palaces while sleeping near the shore. A sailor might glimpse the throne's glow in a restless night. These moments were gifts, fleeting but unforgettable, seeds of legend. And so, on land, the myths multiplied, branching like river deltas. Bards sang of Poseidon's kingdom in taverns filled with salt air. Priests raised altars, casting shells into the surf as offerings. Even kings sought blessings, fearing voyages without the sea's favor. The Waveborn Throne became more than coral and pearl. It became a symbol of connection, of promise, of reverence. Mortals longed for it, though few dared to truly seek it. For the ocean never gave its heart to greed or conquest. Those who searched with arrogance found only storms at their stern. But those who sailed with humility often returned with calm seas. This was the throne's true gift, the lesson of balance. It taught mortals that the sea was alive, patient, eternal. It could carry, it could swallow, but it always remembered. Poseidon himself lived by this truth, guarding it as his sacred vow. He never claimed the sea as his possession, only his charge. The ocean was greater than any god, vast beyond Olympus itself. He was its steward, its voice, its chosen keeper of rhythm. And as long as he listened, the throne endured, unseen yet eternal. Whispered in dreams, sung in waves, waiting always in the blue. Far below the surface, where light barely touched, Poseidon's gaze carried farther than sight. The sea spoke to him in ripples, in whispers, in the long hum of the deep. It told him of rivers rushing from mountains, bringing stories of the earth. It told him of ships drifting, prayers carried in sails heavy with salt. Every current was a messenger, every tide a letter written in motion. The god listened as though the ocean were an endless chorus of voices. Sometimes they were joyful, singing of dolphins leaping under dawn skies. Other times they were mournful, telling of sailors lost to storms. But always the voices returned to him, circling like waves on sand. And he, in his patience, answered not with commands, but with balance. This was the secret of the Waveborn Throne. It was not about power. It was about listening, guiding, and belonging to something greater. Mortals often mistook dominion for mastery, but Poseidon knew otherwise. The sea could never be mastered, not even by a god. It could only be honored, walked with, understood in silence. Thus he ruled not as a tyrant, but as a keeper of harmony. In the depths of his realm, the throne shimmered like a living heart. It pulsed with the rhythm of tides, glowing with the memory of ages. When Poseidon touched it, the waters answered with calm and clarity. The throne carried the weight of storms, yet radiated peace. It was as though the sea itself rested in his presence. In return, Poseidon gave himself wholly, a guardian without end. He did not stand apart from the waves. He was part of them. Yet, even in his realm, he felt the pull of Olympus above. The gods often quarreled, their voices carried on thunder and fire. Zeus claimed the sky, Hera the hearth, Demeter the fertile earth. But Poseidon's claim was different, more elusive, more infinite. For the ocean belonged to none, not even him. It belonged to itself. And yet, it had chosen him, not with chains, but with trust. This truth gave him strength, yet also solitude. For who else could truly understand the endless depth of the sea? Among mortals, poets tried, scribbling verses of foam and wave. Among sailors, some prayed, speaking to him as if to a father. And among children, dreams bloomed of coral palaces and silver fish. In these moments, Poseidon felt closest to them, hearing their voices. The throne reminded him that every heart was like a tide. It rose, it fell, but always carried a rhythm of its own. He cherished that rhythm, listening to it as much as to the sea. Sometimes he walked the shore unseen, leaving no trace but foam. He would watch children chase waves, laughing as the tide drew back. He would watch fishermen mend nets, whispering prayers before sailing. And he would hear, in those simple acts, the same truth as the throne, that the sea was not feared alone, but loved, trusted, and lived with. The Waveborn Throne carried all of this within its living coral. It was not only Poseidon's seat, but a mirror of the ocean's soul. Its glow was not for conquest, but for communion with life itself. Even the stars above seemed to bend lower, reflecting in the waves. For they too knew the sea was vast, holding their light in its skin. Poseidon's rule was quiet, but it resonated across eternity. Every shell on a beach, every ripple on a pond carried his touch. And in this way, the throne's story lived not only in myth, it lived in the very water that filled mortal veins, the same sea. For all life came from the ocean, and to it, all would return. And so Poseidon sat, not as a king apart, but as a guardian within. Keeper of the throne, listener of tides, child of the sea eternal. Far above the surface, Olympus gleamed in gold and stormlight. Yet Poseidon's heart remained with the sea. The gods debated endlessly, their voices rising like thunder across the mountain air. Zeus thundered of power, Athena of wisdom, Ares of conquest, Apollo of light. Each claimed dominion, each sought to shape the world in their own vision. Poseidon listened, yet he felt the tug of the ocean calling him home. He was not made for endless quarrels, for words that struck like spears. His trident was heavy with tides, not with the fire of Olympus. And yet he was bound by blood, a brother to Zeus, an equal in rule. In the council, he spoke little, his words rolling like distant waves. When he spoke, silence followed. For the sea carried authority none could ignore. He reminded them that the world was not only sky on land. It was water, endless and eternal, holding the breath of creation itself. Without it, fields would wither, skies would empty, life would fade to dust. Some gods nodded, but others dismissed him, blinded by their chosen dominions. Poseidon did not press, for he knew the ocean needed no defense. It spoke for itself, through storms and calm, through rain and river. But still, a weight lingered within him, a question unspoken. Did Olympus truly understand the balance the sea demanded? One evening, as twilight touched the horizon, he left the council. He walked the shoreline, the sound of waves soft against his feet. The sand shifted beneath him, yet it welcomed him as an old friend. He thought of mortals, whose lives depended on seas they could not master. They prayed for calm waters, for bountiful fish, for safe passage home. Their prayers were fragile, yet sincere, carrying truth the gods often forgot. For mortals knew the sea not as property, but as mystery and gift. Poseidon bent to pick up a shell, its spiral echoing a soft hum. He listened, and in it, he heard the same voice of the deep. It whispered of balance, of listening, of care beyond dominion. He smiled faintly, knowing the Waveborn Throne had taught him this truth. It was not Olympus that shaped him, but the endless tide below. Still, he returned to the mountain, for he could not abandon his kin. Zeus greeted him with lightning eyes, demanding loyalty, demanding presence. Yet Poseidon answered calmly, his voice steady as a tide at rest. "I am loyal," he said, "but my heart lies with the waters." Zeus frowned, but he could not chain the sea, nor its master. The ocean answered only to itself, and Poseidon walked its rhythm. He left again, descending to the deep, where his throne awaited. There the coral shimmered, glowing with the pulse of the tides. He sat upon it, the weight of Olympus fading from his shoulders. The sea welcomed him, rising gently as though in embrace. And Poseidon whispered not commands, but promises to guard, to listen. He knew the gods above would never fully grasp his realm, but he also knew mortals, in their fleeting lives, often understood. A sailor's song, a child's laughter at the shore, a mother's prayer. These voices mattered as much as thunder, as much as divine decree. The Waveborn Throne carried them all, shimmering with their memory. Poseidon rested not in conquest, but in harmony with his ocean. The stars bent low again, their light trembling upon the waves, and he sat, keeper of tides, ruler of silence, guardian of balance. For in the end, his throne was not power, but belonging eternal. In the stillness of dawn, the sea stretched wide, endless as eternity, its surface brushed with silver light. Poseidon rose from the depths, his form carrying the calm strength of the ocean's heart. Around him, dolphins circled in joy, their songs weaving melodies that echoed across the waves. The world was quiet, yet alive, every ripple carrying secrets, every breeze carrying whispers. On this morning, the god felt something stirring, a question that rose like the tide. The ocean seemed to hum with anticipation, as though waiting for him to listen. He closed his eyes, hearing not water, but voices of mortals carried in the current. A fisherman prayed for safe return, his voice trembling with hope and fear. A mother sang softly, her lullaby drifting across the sea to calm her child. A sailor whispered a promise to see his love again when the journey ended. Each voice was fragile, yet strong, carried across the endless ocean to Poseidon's ears. He listened, and in those words, he felt the weight of trust they placed in him. The Waveborn Throne pulsed beneath the waters, glowing with the rhythm of mortal faith. It reminded him that power was not to be feared, but to be guided with care. Poseidon lifted his trident, not in command, but as a sign of his promise. The ocean answered with a gentle swell, as if bowing to his silent vow. He returned to his throne, coral and pearl shimmering with living light of the deep. Around him, sea creatures gathered, drawn to the stillness of their ruler's resolve. Whales sang their low songs, carrying the memory of ages across the waters. Turtles drifted like ancient guardians, their shells etched with the story of time. Schools of fish shimmered in unison, painting the water with living silver light. And Poseidon sat, not as a king commanding, but as a guardian listening. He remembered the quarrels of Olympus, voices raised in endless pursuit of power. But here, in the sea, there was no quarrel, only harmony in diversity. Every creature had its place, every wave its rhythm, every tide its time. This was the lesson the throne had given, the truth few gods could see. Balance was not won through conquest, but through listening and respect. The sea had taught him patience, and patience had made him strong. Mortals often imagined gods untouchable, beyond the reach of sorrow or longing. Yet Poseidon felt deeply, his heart tethered to the fragile prayers of mortals. They looked to the sea with fear and love, never certain which face it would show. And he, in turn, cherished their voices, carrying them as part of his own. For what was a god without those who believed, those who trusted, those who dreamed? As he thought, the waves shifted, carrying with them a vision from afar. He saw ships sailing under starlight, guided by constellations mirrored in the water. He saw children playing by the shore, laughing as the tide chased their feet. He saw lovers walking hand in hand, leaving footprints soon washed away. Each image was fleeting, yet eternal, woven into the endless memory of the sea. Poseidon opened his eyes, and the ocean glowed, alive with purpose. The throne beneath him whispered of journeys yet untold, of storms yet calmed. He placed his hand upon it, feeling the steady pulse of the deep. It was not merely a seat, but a covenant, a bond that could not be broken. And so he remained, Lord of the deep, keeper of the Waveborn Throne, guardian of balance, listener of tides, and protector of mortal dreams. The stars shone brighter above, their light cradled in the ocean's skin. And the sea, vast and eternal, carried his promise across the world. For in every tide, in every prayer, Poseidon's presence would always endure. The ocean stretched wide beneath the moon, a silver road leading into the unknown horizon. Poseidon stood upon the shore, his gaze fixed on the restless waters before him. The night was quiet, yet filled with the murmurs of waves that never ceased. Each sound was a voice, each ripple a message written in liquid language. He knew the sea held endless mysteries, deeper than gods or mortals could dream. But tonight, the ocean's song carried something different, a note of warning. The tide rose higher than usual, curling with unusual strength under the starlight. He placed his hand upon the water, feeling its heartbeat trembling within. The Waveborn Throne pulsed in response, its light flickering like a living flame. It told him that change was near, carried on the breath of storms. Poseidon closed his eyes, listening not with ears, but with spirit and soul. he felt the ocean's memory. Ancient currents recalling times of silence and renewal. It spoke of cycles, of endings that led to beginnings, of tides eternal. Mortals feared storms, but to the sea, storms were simply breath and renewal. The god of the deep understood, yet he also felt the weight of care. For where mortals saw danger, they also saw him, keeper of balance. Every prayer for safety, every whisper for mercy, reached him through the tide. And so he could not ignore the call, even when storms were natural. He walked into the water, the waves parting gently around his steady form. The dolphins followed close, their voices high and clear against the night air. Above him, the constellations shimmered, mirrored perfectly in the shifting waves below. It was as though the sky bent to meet him, sea and stars entwined. He lifted his trident, its tips glowing faintly with the breath of the deep. Not in command, but in communion. He let the power hum within him. The sea calmed, not silenced, but balanced, a promise held between ruler and realm. Poseidon returned to his throne, coral spiraling with light, alive with ocean breath. He sat, not in weariness, but in deep reflection of what lay ahead. The throne whispered to him, not in words, but in pulses of energy. It told him of mortals building ships stronger, daring to push into unknown seas. It told him of prayers that grew louder, of fear and hope rising together. And it told him of his place, not as master, but as guide eternal. He breathed deeply, the salt air filling him with the calm of centuries. The sea was vast, but so too were the hearts of those who lived by it. He knew they would look to him, not for conquest, but for guardianship. The thought comforted him, for he had no wish for glory or chains. His gift was patience, his realm an endless reminder of balance and renewal. As the night deepened, the stars shifted, and the moonlight softened on the tide. Poseidon remained, trident by his side, eyes steady on the horizon's line. He felt not alone, for the sea itself breathed with him, bound as one. And though Olympus might call, and gods might quarrel, he belonged here. For here was truth, here was balance, here was the endless rhythm of life. The throne pulsed once more, glowing brighter as though in agreement with him. And Poseidon smiled, a quiet smile that carried the strength of calm seas. For he was not simply lord of the ocean, but its listener, its guardian. And in the silence of night, the sea whispered back, eternal, unbroken. The ocean does not end. It simply continues, rolling from one horizon to the next. And so too does the story of Poseidon, keeper of the deep, listener of tides. His throne remains, alive with coral and pearl, glowing with the breath of eternity. It waits not for conquest, but for communion, a bond that cannot be broken. Mortals still walk the shores, still whisper prayers into the waves with trembling voices. Some ask for calm seas, some for safe return, some for dreams yet unspoken. Each prayer is carried into the deep, where Poseidon still listens with patience. For gods may quarrel, stars may fade, but the sea will always remember. Children chase the tide, laughing as it retreats, never knowing their joy is heard. Sailors sing their chants, raising voices that echo across the waters like timeless hymns. And mothers still hush children with lullabies that the ocean carries far. These small voices shape the sea as much as tides shape the sand. And Poseidon, bound not by chains but by care, carries them within his heart. The Waveborn Throne glimmers in silence, its rhythm steady as a heartbeat. It holds storms, it holds calm, it holds every whisper ever spoken to the sea. In it lives memory, not just of gods, but of every creature that ever swam. Every dolphin leap, every whale song, every ripple has touched its living coral. Poseidon sits upon it, not as a conqueror, but as a guardian eternal. He knows the ocean does not belong to him, nor to Olympus, nor to mortals. It belongs only to itself, vast and endless, yet generous to those who listen. This is the truth of the sea, the truth the throne carries without end. Not power, but balance. Not mastery, but belonging. Not silence, but listening. The stars bend low at night, their light resting on the water's skin. They mirror the ocean, endless and deep, reflecting eternity upon eternity. And when mortals look out at sea, they see not emptiness, but promise. A promise that they are part of something larger, something eternal and alive. Poseidon's story is not one of conquest, but of communion and trust. He rules not through fear, but through harmony with the tide's endless rhythm. The gods above may fight for thrones, but his throne is alive, breathing. It is the Waveborn Throne, eternal seat of the sea, keeper of balance. And so, when the waves crash, when the tide retreats, listen closely. For in the sound of the ocean lives the voice of the god of the deep. Not commanding, not demanding, but steady, patient, eternal in its embrace. He speaks in whispers carried by foam, in songs sung by whales and shells. And if you listen closely, you may hear him, as sailors once swore they did. A voice not of thunder, but of calm, promising you are never alone. For the ocean connects all things, from mountain streams to distant stars. And in that connection, Poseidon's presence lingers, quiet and enduring. So when you stand by the sea, let its rhythm remind you of him. Let it remind you that power can be gentle, that strength can be still, that belonging is greater than mastery, and listening greater than command. The story of Poseidon does not end, for the ocean does not end. It continues, rolling forever, carrying his name in every tide. And so we close this tale, not with an ending, but with a beginning. For every wave is a new story, and every tide a promise reborn. The Waveborn Throne gleams still, hidden yet eternal, waiting in the deep. And Poseidon remains, Lord not of conquest, but of balance and belonging. Guardian of the sea, listener of voices, keeper of eternity's rhythm. The ocean breathes, the throne glimmers, and the story flows on,